On a quiet afternoon, in a small home filled with the soft aroma of cooked rice and the gentle warmth of sunlight streaming through the windows, two tiny kittens sat side by side on the wooden floor. Their names were Snowy and Ginger, siblings who had been born just a few months earlier under the old wooden bench outside the house. Snowy, the kitten with the soft white fur and tiny beige patches, was the cautious one. Her eyes always seemed to be full of questions about the world, as if she was trying to understand every sound and shadow. Ginger, on the other hand, with his faint orange markings, had a curious sparkle in his gaze, a spirit that made him chase anything that moved, from fallen leaves to the tail of his own sister. Every day around noon, they would gather near the place where lunch was served. They didn't always understand human schedules, but they knew one thing. When the steel plate was placed on the floor, something delicious was coming. On this particular day, the bowl was filled with warm, fluffy, steamed rice. The two kittens stared at it with a mix of excitement and confusion. Neither of them had ever tasted plain rice before. To them, food meant milk or the occasional fish their human would sometimes share. Snowy leaned forward first, stretching her tiny neck, smithing the rice cautiously. Ginger followed, but instead of sniffing, he stared at Snowy, as if waiting for her approval. They were too small to understand that this wasn't their meal. It was only temporarily placed there. But to them, it looked like a feast. Yet, they didn't pounce on it. Instead, they waited. Waited for the human who always fed them. Waited for the familiar voice that called their names gently. Waited for the warm hand that stroked their heads. Their little tails curled neatly beside them. And they sat like two fluffy guardians of the rice, watching over it with quiet patience. Minutes felt long to Kittens, and Ginger eventually stood up, took one paw and poked Snowy, as if to say, maybe we should try it, just a little. Snowy shook her head, or as close as a kitten could come, her whiskers twitching. No, they'll come. Let's wait. And so they did. The shadows shifted slow on the wooden floor. A soft breeze came in from the window, and the kittens, side by side, continued watching the bowl like two loyal soldiers guarding treasure. Then, footsteps approached. Their ears perked up instantly. Their eyes sparkled. Their tiny bodies straightened at once. Their human entered. The moment the familiar person sat down, Snowy and Ginger rushed forward, not to the rice, but to the human. They rubbed their faces against the warm feet, purring loudly. It wasn't the food they had been excited about after all. It was the presence, the love, the comfort. The human chuckled, gently pushing the rice aside and placing a smaller plate with warm milk and little bits of fish for them. Snowy dove in first, and Ginger followed, their tiny mews filling the room like music. The steel plate of rice sat untouched, but the human smiled at the realization. The kittens were never waiting for the food. They were waiting for the person who made them feel safe. And so, as Snowy and Ginger ate happily, the house felt a little warmer, the day felt a little softer, and the bond between the kittens and their human grew a little deeper. Snowy and Ginger were on a mission. One evening, the two tiny kittens discovered something unusual. A wooden ladder leaning quietly in the corner of the room. To humans, it was just furniture. But to these curious little adventurers, it was a secret passageway to a world of wonder. Ginger, the brave orange and white kitten, went first. He placed his tiny paws on the rung and peeked through the gaps, his bright eyes wide with excitement. There must be treasure up here, he thought, climbing higher with determination. Snowy, the fluffy white kitten, watched for a moment. She tilted her head, wondering what Ginger had found. Curiosity tickled her whiskers, and before long, she hopped up too, gripping the rung with her soft paws. She stretched, sniffed, and tried to see what was so interesting. But all Snowy found was Ginger staring back at her. The two kittens exchanged a look, half confusion, half mischievous delight, and burst into tiny purrs. Maybe there was no treasure. Maybe there was no mystery. But climbing the ladder together, that was an adventure all by itself. And so they stayed there for a while, pawing at the wood, peeking through the gaps, and discovering the joy of exploring the world side by side.